Well, Razorback fans, we know that Arkansas has been known for always having a lot of great running backs, and last year they lost quite a few of them. But are they going to be better at running back this year? Let's talk about it on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors. I'm also the host of Inside Arkansas Live, which you can catch every weekday starting at noon on Inside Arkansas and InsideArkansas.com. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long, so visit FanDuel.com to get started. Hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. Weather was really nice. I know it rained a little bit, got a little cool, and starting to feel like football season weather, and it'll be here before we know it. Just a mere, what are we at, 17 days away? Oh, yeah, we'll talk about that. So getting closer. But, you know, one of the things that got brought up, and it's kind of the two position groups. We think I've been doing that, but two position groups that have been discussed, or at least have been able to meet with the media last time since we've done this podcast, has been the running backs in the offensive line. So we're going to talk about both of those because, let's be honest, they're pretty crucial. We'll start with the running backs, though. If you've listened to me on Inside Arkansas, if you've listened to this podcast or anything like that, you know I am the biggest Jaquindon Jackson fan. Transfer from Utah. And we had a chance to hear from him as well as Rodney Hill, and you know, it's just kind of interesting, and we'll play a clip here in just a second, but it's so interesting to me to watch these guys and to study the roster and look at the entire group of guys in the backfield and then be like, yeah, none of these guys were on the team last year except for one, Rashad Dubinion, and he was like the third, sometimes fourth guy on the team. Like, how many positions does that, or how many times does that happen to position groups in college football? I mean, pretty often. Arkansas is not unique in that. In a lot of cases, it sometimes can be really, I don't know, like scary, maybe uncertain, mysterious. It just all depends on how you're going to look at it. But the running backs and the offensive line have something in common this year, at least for me. You lost a lot of players on those two units from last season, but both of them are going to be better overall. That's my prediction. Now, the offensive line is a little bit easier, and we'll talk more about that. But the running back position, I mean, you had Rocket Sanders, where I know he was dealing with injury and everything, and people talked about how he wasn't any good last year. And, you know, here's the thing. He may not be good this year at South Carolina, whatever it is. But you saw what he was able to do when he rushed for over 1,400 yards just a couple of years ago. I don't blame anybody for the offense last year. Like, if any player looked bad on the offense last year, I don't look at them and be like, oh, it's because they're bad, maybe other than the offensive line. I look at it as they were never put in a position to be successful. Like, we saw KJ Jefferson be successful. We saw Rocket Sanders be successful. You know, we saw those players be successful. They just weren't put in a position with the new offense coordinator and bad offensive line. It just didn't work out for him. So I'm not holding that against anybody. But Rocket Sanders was a really good running back. And A.J. Green, I really liked him as a running back too. I mean, he was a guy that stuck with Arkansas for 3 straight years and really was never the featured back, just kind of the secondary guy. But you had him, and, you know, you had Dominic Johnson, who was another guy that when he was healthy, I don't know how good he actually was or how good he was going to be. But in 2021, when he was healthy enough to run, like, he was good. In fact, I felt like in 2021, he was the best running back Arkansas had. Well, all 3 of those guys transferred out. And so when you approach it that way and you hear it that way, it's like, okay, then the odds are that the running back room is not going to be as good. It's not going to be as experienced, not going to be, you know, whatever. Even in the days of the transfer portal, there's not a lot of certainty in all of it when new guys come in and have to replace a lot of production that's been missing over the past 1, 2, in some cases, in this case, 3 years. But I think Arkansas is in a better position right now at running back. Yeah, I know I talked about Jaquindon Jackson. I know I did. And all of you know that I'm a big Jaquindon Jackson guy. I still think he's going to rush for over 1,000 yards, but I'm assuming he stays healthy. That's the important thing. But I think he's going to rush for over 1,000 yards. I think he is going to actually, I guess what my hot take was is that I think he's going to rush for more yards at Arkansas this season than what Rocket Sanders will at South Carolina. And I'm a big fan. I really am. But as we know in college football and in the running back position, you can't just have one feature back anymore. That's not how it really works. It has to be by committee. So who else does Arkansas have? Well, I mentioned Rashad Dubinion, the guy that's coming back and was on the team last year. But then you add in a true freshman like Braylon Russell, where he was a 4-star player coming out of the state of Arkansas. He was out of Benton. And he's only 6'1". And I say only 6'1" because he comes in at 253 pounds. The dude's a load. I would love him to be in that position, kind of like what Cody Walker was his freshman year in 2011, where he just goes inside and just gets those 1 yard, 2 yard scores. We'll see if he actually makes things into the mix. But then, those are the ones that we kind of heard a lot about in the spring. But then you throw in a guy like a Rodney Hill, which I, knew a little bit about, but his story was really fascinating. And, he was talking about because he came from Florida A&M, technically, if you look at the roster and the website, but he was a guy that was at Florida State, and because of some stuff that happened with NIL where his parents hired a representation for NIL, and that person, I guess, took all of his money and was lying to people, and so he had to leave Florida State. Didn't want to leave, but he had to leave because of the situation. Went to Florida A&M, was hoping something would pop up, and then Arkansas did. So he was on a good Florida State team. He didn't play a whole lot, but he was a good player coming out of high school, and so who knows? Maybe he could play something into the mix at the running back position. So those are 4 guys right there at running back. Now, I didn't even mention Tyrell Reed, who is the kid that came from Hutchinson Community College. A lot of people haven't really been talking much about him, but he's a guy that has been mentioned also in the running back room. You have a new running backs coach. So the point is, yes, you have a lot of new faces. Yes, you have some guys that you're not totally sure about. They haven't really played much in the SEC or anything like that. But I think just like everything else in this offense, with what I've seen at least in spring ball, and even in the small things of fall camp, they look the part. And I think with the connection with the Bobby Petrino offense, they're going to be just fine. And I think they're going to be successful. I think they're going to be better. I don't know why people still get under this complete and total misnomer that Bobby Petrino's offenses are just air it out, throw it all over the field crazy. I know that he's always been known more so for his quarterbacks and for his passing game, but it's not like he's throwing it 50, 60 times a game. Folks, when Bobby Petrino was the head coach at Arkansas, he was there for 4 years, right? 2 of those 4 seasons, he had an 1,000-yard rusher. His first year with Michael Smith, and then Nile Davis in 2010. Even in 2009, it was one of those years where a lot of different running backs like Nile Davis, like Ronnie Wingo, like Michael Smith again, like Roderick Green, were all by committee and all that. And then in 2011, Nile Davis got hurt. Dennis Johnson had to step up, and I know he didn't get 1,000 yards, but we all know how good he was. But the point is the running back room has always been really solid under Bobby Petrino. He knows how to get him in a scoring position and also get him involved in the passing game. And all of that is awesome. All of that is great, and that's what I feel good about. But the other wrinkle that we need to throw into this, and anytime that we or me start comparing things back to 2011 or whatever, Arkansas has something different, though, in their rushing attack. They have a rushing quarterback, or at least a quarterback that's capable of using his legs to make plays. They didn't have that under Bobby Petrino in the first time around. Great quarterbacks. Ryan Mallett, rest in peace. Tyler Wilson, great quarterbacks. But this is a different type of player now. How's that going to involve itself in the rushing attack? I guess we'll have to wait and see. But I feel like, knowing Bobby Petrino and the type of coach he is, He's going to make sure his guys are put in position to be successful, but he's also going to make sure that it opens up for everybody else to have a lot of success. And if Taylon Green uses his legs, it's only going to make it a lot easier for those running backs for Arkansas. We'll talk a little bit about the offensive line here in just a second, so stay with us here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, folks, I got to remind every one of you that we are brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for a winning championship, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. And whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts that you need at all the prices you want, it's easy to make sure that your car is the MVP and bring home those huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, so moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. So we talked about the running backs and the position that they're in, and it's kind of crazy because last year was so weird for many reasons. The 7-3 game that we all witnessed, the fact that the defense improved so dramatically, but the offense who returned most of the same players dropped off so heavily. Like, it was just a weird year. But without question, the weirdest and most unexplainable, and without question, the biggest reason why Arkansas had a bad year last year was because of the offensive line. You can't even try to sugarcoat it. Like, the offensive line sucked. Let's just be honest. They couldn't block. They couldn't pass protect. They couldn't open up holes. They couldn't communicate. They couldn't do anything. And we know that sometimes, especially in Razorback sports and Razorback football, there's been position groups that have been weaknesses on teams. Like, think about it. Over the past 20 years, we know that there's been certain position groups that have been pretty weak or had years where they were weak. Like the secondary just a few years ago was the worst. Terrible. We've seen the linebackers be a weakness. Might be this year. We'll see. We've seen the wide receiver position be a little We even see quarterbacks be bad. Really, the only position group that you could say has been fairly consistent for Arkansas has been the running back position and the tight end position. But the offensive line, it's a little bit different when your head coach is Sam Pittman. You have to have somebody that's out there trying to make plays at every position, of course. But having the offensive line coach, Sam Pittman, not just have a meh offensive line, have an awful, historically bad offensive line, made no sense. Made no sense. If Arkansas had a good offensive line and good offensive line play last year, would they have won 10 games? No. Would Dan Enos have been just this wizard of an offensive coordinator where it all worked out? No. But they would have won more games. They wouldn't have been an embarrassment like they were if just the offensive line was solid. Well, that's the biggest question right now, isn't it? Give Sam Pittman credit. He fired Cody Kennedy. I don't care what he went to Mississippi. No. He fired him. They moved on. And they replaced a lot of the players that were not getting it done with players that look like they will get it done. High-level transfers. Guys that played at big schools and everything. So on paper, the offensive line looks to be better. Potentially could be significantly better. Will it be the best in the SEC? No, but it'll be serviceable. And the thing is, as much as I'm a huge fan of Bobby Petrino, you all know that. As much of a fan I am of Taylon Green, you all know that. We just talked about the running backs and how much I'm a fan of them. You know that. You know how much I'm a big fan of Luke Hasz. You know that. You know how much of a big fan I am of the wide receiver group that's all coming back. You know that. But folks, none of that matters. None of it matters if you don't have an offensive line that's good. Taylor Green, all these guys, like they could be the best of the best, and they could be perfect. They could be Heisman Trophy candidates. But if they don't have the offensive line to go along with what they're trying to do and the offense they're trying to put together and trying to put forth, the season's a wrap already. It ain't going to be it. It's going to come to an end very quickly. It's going to unravel very quickly. And that's where Sam Pittman hiring Eric Mateos, who, for all intents and purposes, I really like. I think he's a good offensive line coach. I think he was a little bit more proven than Cody Kennedy for sure. Eric Mateos was at least coaching at Baylor, a major university and a Power 5 team. And at least on the recruiting side of things, he's done a really good job. And him and Sam Pittman have been working right together to make sure that they right this ship. But, I've talked about how this season will go, this team will go as this offense goes. And it's true. Yeah, you need the defense to be good and as good as they can be. But for Arkansas, give me a really great offense over and a average defense over a really great defense and an average offense. I just feel like that's going to be the name of the game for a place like Arkansas. But when I say that this season's going to live or die by the offense, or it's going to go as far as the offense goes, what I'm really saying is it's going to go like the offensive line. If the offensive line is good this year, folks, if it's good, then Arkansas's offense is going to just go crazy. It's going to be incredible. It's going to be so fun to watch because I believe they got the pieces at every position. Quarterback, running back, tight end, wide receiver, all of it. They got the skilled position guys, and they got the coordinator to make it happen. But it all hinges on the success of that offensive line. It all hinges on it. Josh Braun, Tykeus Crawford, Addison Nichols, Fernando Carmona, Blackstock, like all these guys, on paper, they look good. On paper, it looks like they're coming together. They got some work to do, of course, but it's all come down to them. No pressure, but it all comes down to them. And that's how the success will be this year. We'll close up shop here on the Locked On Razorbacks coming up next in the final segment, so stay with us. All right, folks, just want to remind you all that we are brought to you by FanDuel here on Locked On Razorbacks. I love sports. I love them so much that I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports just aren't sporting like we want them to. FanDuel, at least, lets me keep going and keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up any bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is looking to hook up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. It's FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, so final segment here on the show. I'm not going to do this every single day because it just depends on what's going on and all of that. But, I kind of have fun with this thing where on Inside Arkansas, I've been posting these highlights of a countdown kind of for the Razorbacks. And sometimes it's easier said than done. Sometimes I may forget. But overall, it's like, for instance, when I saw that it was 20 days away, I posted the Ronnie Wingo wheel route against Bama in 2010 because he was number 20. So I try to base it on either the jersey number or the yards for a touchdown that it was, or maybe the year it was, maybe the score that it was. Like have some sort of relatability to whatever number is in the countdown until Razorback football season starts up. And today, 17 is the number, 17 days away. And if you're listening to this podcast right now and you're a Razorback fan, which I know you are, just off the top of your head, quickly, like just who do you think is, like when you think the number 17 in Razorback football, who do you think of? Right off the bat, number 17. Who is it? Well, I can tell you mine. And I'll be honest, 17 is, at least in my memory, has not been a really popular number. But the first player that comes up for me is Zach Clark. Do y'all remember Zach Clark? Like early 2000s quarterback from Fayetteville High School. I think he's the head coach of Springdale High, maybe, something like that. But anyways, he was number 17, and he's really the only one I ever think of. The only other one that I can actually think of, like off the top of my head, and it's not a good thing, he was fine, but it was the season, but is Nick Starkel. Nick Starkel was also number 17. So those are really the only ones that come to mind. I don't know any other 17s, and who knows, maybe you're yelling at me in your car and you're on your headphones or whatever it is and just screaming at the top of your lungs, be like, dude, you're an idiot. You don't remember this player? Well, sorry. But either way, those that come to mind. And that's why the stuff I like. 16, it's so funny when we do if we do 16 tomorrow, but there was a player that was always known for it, but luckily another player overtook that number and what they're known for too. So we'll probably get to that tomorrow. But either way, appreciate all of you listening in and watching in the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or in Google Play. Get after me on Twitter at John Nabors Show as part of Inside Arkansas for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. Same sports show, same sports channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you then.